Rain pinned off the metal roof like the ticking of a bomb, steady and indifferent. The wind shoved against the hangar's side, howling through seams not quite sealed. Somewhere beyond the dark ridgeline, the radar arrays spun silent, blind. Oblivious. Lena Park's boots moved across the concrete with purposeful rhythm. One hand carried a worn mop, the other balanced a bucket half full of gray water. Her hair was pulled tight beneath a faded cap, her frame narrow beneath the drab. Maintenance coveralls. To anyone watching, and no one was, she was just another janitor working the night shift. She paused at the far edge of Bay 3, eyes tracking up the scaffolding toward the CUMS console, perched like an afterthought 20 feet up. Her lips pressed into a thin line. The new positioning of the CUMS node made no sense. It had been shifted last week. No announcement. No schematic update. Just moved 8 feet left and 3 feet lower, which made the northern quarter of the compound vulnerable. She looked again. The storm cloaked the hillside, but she could feel the shape of it. Somewhere out there, behind the tree line, someone was watching. She didn't know how, but she always knew when. She dropped the mop into the bucket, water sloshing against the rim, and resumed her path. At the operations center, 2 men barked over a strategy board, red-cheeked and self-assured. Neither looked up when she slipped in to collect the trash bin. She moved like vapor present, but unnoticed. Their conversation floated over her. She wants to recalibrate the perimeter triggers. She also thought the last drone flyover was a pattern test. She's overthinking everything. Lena didn't flinch. The she was her. They never used her name, but it was always clear. Back in the barracks, she unpacked her kit. She laid out her gear with a reverence usually reserved for sacred things. A rusted wrench from her father's shed, a cracked tactical compass, and a silenced sidearm that was not standard issue. She had never fired it here. Not yet. Her father's voice whispered from memory. Always on nights like this. The ones who watch without blinking, they're the ones you never hear coming. She tightened the straps on her vest. Her shift was technically over. No one would notice if she vanished into the shadows outside the southern checkpoint. She moved low through the fencing, counting the rhythm of the cameras. 22 seconds of blind spot between rotations. She slipped between them like thread, threw a needle, and waited. 300 meters past the wire, she knelt beside a boulder and unfolded a thermal scope. The wind cut sharp across her cheekbone, stinging her eyes. She steadied her breath, their movement. A shimmer like a veil of heat over snow. Cloaked drones. 3, maybe 4. They weren't local. And they weren't here to test response time. She made no call. She took no shot. She simply recorded the coordinates, double-checked wind drift, triangulated probable entry arcs, and returned as if she'd never left. By morning, she had filed her second anomaly report. By lunch, it was buried. That evening, the hangar buzzed with a rare visitor, Colonel Thatcher, steel-eyed and always in a rush. He barely acknowledged Lena as he strode past, but his Ada young lieutenant, barely old enough to shave, paused when she stepped aside to let him through. "You with logistics?" "Something like that," she replied. He smirked. "Well, if you find time between mopping, maybe tell your CO those emergency drills. Too much, whole team's on edge." She didn't answer, just nodded once and disappeared down the hall. In her quarters, small, Spartan, forgettable, she stared at the blinking cursor on her screen. Her reports sat unsent. No one read them. Not really, but she'd learned from her mother, document everything. The logs weren't for them, they were for after. When it all fell apart, that night, she adjusted her own maps, marked every blind spot, every sensor reroute, every place where the enemy could enter without resistance. Then she added one more mark, a single, red X dot right where she knew they'd strike first. The next morning, it happened. An explosion, sharp, controlled, surgical, tore through the eastern perimeter. Everyone scrambled, Sirens wailed. Radios screamed, but Lena didn't move. She already had her boots on, already had her gear packed. And when the ops chief yelled for locations, she handed him a printout. The coordinates matched perfectly. His face blanched. How the hell did you? She was already moving toward the breach, toward the men no one believed were real. She moved with quiet rage. This time, there would be no warning. Just her, and the weapon no one knew she carried. Drop a if you've ever had your warning ignored. Comment, I saw it coming, if you've been there before. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Part 2. Smoke choked the eastern corridor before Lena Park could reach it, acrid and thick, carrying the hollow thud of collapsing steel. She moved like a shadow through the haze, senses sharpened to the crackle of embers and distant cries. Every step brought her closer to the breach, and to the moments the command center still refused to acknowledge. Cold open. Hook. 40 words or fewer. Flames licked the scorched frame of the blown-out door. Lena Park slipped inside, the air ripping her. Mask with every breath. Somewhere beyond, enemy drones hovered, silent specters. She'd been right. Everyone had ignored her warning. Everyone but her. Backstory thread. Lena's fingers trembled as she climbed over the twisted metal. She tasted iron-old blood, she thought. The compound's eastern wall had been her childhood playground, drilled into her with stories by her mother. How a single shot could save a squad. How a precise strike could turn tides. She'd grown up listening to tales of her parents' heroism, her father's sniper nest behind enemy lines, her mother patching wounds at the front and vowing never to let their sacrifices be in vain. But here, behind these concrete facades and fortified doors, her legacy meant nothing. They'd scoffed at her heritage, dismissed her lineage as an emotional crutch. Yet every gear calibration, every sensor alignment she performed had been guided by instincts honed since she was a child. Inciting incident. Sharp crack sounded as falling debris collapsed behind her. She ducked, pressurized air hissing from a ruptured pipe. In the dim glow of her flashlight, she glimpsed movement, a figure flickering between embered shapes. Clad in black gear, faceless, the intruders had breached schedule. Her coordinates had been used to guide these strikes, not an accident. A betrayal. She yanked her sidearm free, its weight reassuring in her gloved hand. This was the moment she'd trained for, the moment to prove that when warnings go unheeded, action must speak louder than memos. Crisis and reveal. Bullets spat from the darkness. She pivoted, returning fire with clinical precision. Each shot rang true, finding mortar cracks and dropping one enemy operative after another. The first drone descended, shredded by her makeshift jammer, her father's old signal scrambler. Jury rigged to her vest, her palms stung as she triggered the device. The whine of the hovering drones faltered. They wavered and crashed, metallic carcasses scattering across the blood-stained floor. Lena advanced, heartbeat thrumming in her ears, undeterred by the echo of her own gunfire. Resolution and reflection. Silence fell, broken only by distant alarms and the ragged pulse of her breath. She retrieved a downed drone, pried open its casing. With the rusted wrench she carried. Inside, circuits bore the same unique calibration she'd mapped last night. Her hands worked furiously, connecting and rerouting wires. She wasn't just a janitor, not anymore. She was sentinel, engineer, and sniper all in one. And now she had proof. With trembling fingers, she recorded the drone's telemetry feed, every corrupted data packet, every false waypoint. This was evidence of collusion, of sabotage. She emerged from the corridor into the flickering glow of emergency lights. Soldiers and officers alike stared, mouths agape, at the wreckage, and at her. The operations chief hurried over, eyes wild. "How did you know?" he panted. "Because I've been telling you," Lena said, voice low but unshakable. And now you'll listen." She handed him the memory card. He plugged it into a handheld reader. The screen lit up with damning proof. His face drained of color as the data scrolled by. Detailed coordinates, timestamps, authorization codes forged in someone's name. "This isn't an attack," Lena whispered. "It's an inside job." A hush fell. Across the hallway, officers exchanged uneasy glances. Men who'd mocked her perched uncomfortably under the glare of truth. No one spoke. Then, Colonel Thatcher's voice boomed over the comms. "All units lock down secondary entry points. And Getney Park on Channel 2. Lena caught her breath. She'd crossed the line. Taken the weapon no one knew she carried. Exposed the betrayal, and now there was no turning back. Drop a if you've ever been the one ignored. Comment I warned you if you've ever had the last word." Flames bled into the cloud bank, painting the compound's horizon a blistering orange. A second blast rocked the ground beneath Lena's feet, sending pebbles scattering across the busted concrete like dice from a rigged table. Smoke churned above the breach, thick with chemical bite and scorched metal. She didn't slow. She knew this terrain too well. And so did they. Cold open. Hook is less than or equal to 40 words. A red dot pulsed on Lena's visor, exactly where she'd marked it the night before. Her hands didn't shake, not even now. She was walking into her own prophecy, and this time, she wasn't asking anyone's permission to be right. The breach had peeled back the perimeter wall like a tin lid. Chunks of reinforced polymer lay half-buried in rubble, twisted fencing tangled with insulation, and someone's combat vest abandoned in haste or ripped away with the body. Still inside, 3 guards lay sprawled beside the south control panel. 2 were breathing. 1 was not. Lena knelt, fingers already pressing hard into a pressure point at the man's neck. A beat. He was alive. Just barely. She retrieved her trauma kit from her belt without looking, already sliding a compression wrap. Beneath his arm, her mother's voice ran like a metronome through her mind. "Don't panic. Don't pause. Stop the bleed, then the breath." She sealed the wound with practiced calm. No theatrics. No wasted movement. Then she tagged the man's vest with a red triangle marked for evac and Rose. The next drone shimmered into view just beyond the breach line. Its cloaking flickered, a soft ripple against the haze, but Lena wasn't looking at the drone. She was watching the pattern. The movement. Her hands moved automatically, plugging coordinates into her interface. 2 more blips appeared, one in the tree line at her 7 o'clock, another heading along the southern ridge. The strike team wasn't improvising. They were following a blueprint. Hers. She whispered into her cum. "Drone formation Echo 12. They're following the revised topographical schematic. That schematic was mine." Silence. Then the ops chief's voice buzzed back, strained. "You saying they stole your design?" "No," Lena said. "I'm saying someone inside gave it to them." She ducked as a round punched into the sandbag behind her. Dirt exploded across her cheek. Another hissed closer. She rolled behind a barricade, yanked a sidearm from her thigh holster, and fired twice. The first shot missed. The second didn't single quotes the attacker, a man in desert camo with no insignia, crumpled behind a shattered comms. Dish, no identification. No badge. Just like the last one. Mercenaries. Not soldiers. Which meant whoever orchestrated this didn't just want disruption. They wanted deniability. She moved again, fast. The hangar's eastern service entrance was sealed, but she knew the access port low, behind a stack of spent fuel cells. She yanked it open, slid inside, and dropped into a crawl space no wider than her shoulders. The smell hit her first. Ozone and rot. Then the quiet click of metal on metal. Too quiet to be accident. She froze. A figure crouched 10 feet ahead. Back. Turned, working intently on something metallic, a box wired into the hangar's fuel lines. Sabotage. Lena drew her knife. Guns were loud. And if she startled him, he might detonate the whole line. She approached in silence. One step. Another. Her blade met soft flesh just below the jaw, angled clean. The saboteur dropped without a word, twitching once. Lena disarmed the trigger with shaking fingers. The countdown clock was 22 seconds from detonation. She cut the wire, lights blinked. Then died. She leaned back against the cool pipe, breath catching, and then a voice echoed through her earpiece. Not the ops chief, not Thatcher, a woman's voice. "We see you, Lena. We always have." Lena's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "Someone who read every one of your reports and made sure no one else did." "Why?" "Because you knew too much, and you weren't one of us." The cum line went dead. Lena stared at the corpse beside her. The man had a tattoo behind his ear barely visible. A shape she recognized from a photo once, buried in her mother's war files. This wasn't just betrayal. It was legacy. She emerged from the crawlspace, wiping blood from her gloves. If they wanted her silenced, they should have buried her with those blueprints. But she was still standing, and now she had a name to chase. Drop if you've ever uncovered more than you bargained for. Comment. Keep going if you're with her now. Let me know when to continue with part 4. Lightning tore the sky in half, followed by a thunderclap that shook the roof supports overhead. Lena Park stood at the hangar's edge, her boots soaked in rain and blood and grit. The voice from the cum still echoed in her skull, cool, clinical. Devastating. Cold open hook is less than or equal to 40 words. Lena stared at the sabotaged fuel line, at the corpse cooling beside it, and whispered to no one, "You knew I'd find it. But you didn't think I'd survive." She turned toward the southern exit. She was going to prove them all wrong. The control center had gone to lockdown. From the ridge she could see the lights flash red, sector by sector. Emergency protocols were now active across the site. The only problem was they didn't know what they were responding to. She did. The mercenaries were still in play. She could feel it, and someone inside was still feeding them data. Lena slipped into the back of a maintenance vehicle parked just beyond the depot and reached under the dash. Her hand found what she'd hidden 2 weeks earlier, an unregistered radio repeater and an analog field map, real paper, real ink, smuggled from a decommissioned armory. She didn't trust their systems anymore, and she wouldn't be using their channels. She keyed a tight beam message to one recipient. Only one. An old contact. Codename, Ivy. It took 2 minutes for a reply. Confirming breach. Confirming insider. : Do you need extraction? Lena stared at the rain slicing down her windshield. Her jaw clenched. : No. I need names. She parked the utility rig 200 meters uphill, beneath the old radar mast. Ivy had once worked out of Site 11, an experimental listening post that was shut down after a mysterious fire. Lena had never believed that fire was accidental. Now she knew it wasn't. Soft chirp from the repeater. Ivy's response glowed dimly in the dark. One name matches multiple overrides. Page. Lbrd. Lena stared at it. Not because it was a surprise, but because it made sense. Page was embedded in logistics. She had access to Lena's files, her rotations, even her personal locker codes. She'd been the one to intercept Lena's first anomaly report. Had even joked about it. Maybe they're just here for the vending machines. Page had laughed. No one laughed like that, unless they knew something would be buried. Lena typed only 2 words. Proof? Ivy responded with a photo. Page standing next to a known insurgent. Contractor, different hair, different country. Same smile. Lena didn't wait. She descended the ridge under cover of storm. Thundermaster steps. Rain slicked her face, ran into her collar. She bypassed checkpoint lights with the grace of a dancer trained by muscle memory and dread. Her destination. Sector B environmental controls. No one guarded it. Too mundane. Too irrelevant. Exactly where Paige liked to work. The building was silent save for the drone of filtration units. Lena stepped inside, silenced pistol drawn. The lights flickered overhead, sensors waking with her heat signature. A door creaked open in the back. She didn't hesitate. 2 steps, weapon raised. And there she was, Paige Halbert, clipboard in hand, smiling faintly like she'd expected company. "Evening," she said. "You're going to give me one reason not to end this right now," Lena whispered. Paige blinked slowly. "You wouldn't shoot me. Why?" "Because you need someone alive who can explain the rest." Lena didn't lower the gun. Paige moved slowly, set the clipboard down. "You want to know who else? Fine, but you'll have to let me walk you into the archives. They're off-grid, unconnected to the compound network. That's where the real list is." Lena's mind raced. It could be a trap. Probably was, but she couldn't ignore the possibility that at WASN T. 10 minutes later, they entered the subterranean. Wing through an old storm access tunnel. No cameras. No RFID readers, just keypads with rotating codes. Paige entered the first set without flinching. Lena kept the gun leveled at her back. Inside the archive room, rows of locked cabinets lined the walls, dust thick on every handle. The place smelled like paper and betrayal. Paige moved to a drawer marked Redacted Bastion. "You're not the first," she said quietly. "You're just the first to survive long enough to ask the right questions." She pulled out a manila folder and handed it to Lena. Inside dash photos, satellite maps, financial transfers. Names. Rank. Clearance. It wasn't just Paige. It was half the command tier, selling intel, redirecting drone patrols, overriding triggers. Lena's hand tightened on the folder. Paige looked at her calmly. "What now?" Lena stared down at the evidence, then at her pistol. And then at the backup hard drive mounted to the archive terminal. She moved toward it, plugged in a secure data key, copied everything. "Now," she said, "we end it. Drop a, if you're with her now. Comment, burn it down. If you've seen enough, let me know when to continue with part 5. The power grid surged. Somewhere overhead, a transformer popped, casting a rolling flicker through the underground archive chamber. Lena didn't move. Her gaze locked on the folder in her hand, then to the woman in front of her. Paige Halbert, smiling like someone who had survived firestorms before. Cold open hook is less than or equal to 40 words. As emergency lights bathed the archive in blood-red glow, Lena held the drive of names that could break everything, and Paige watched her with the expression of someone who knew just how many explosions started with silence. The silence between them dragged. Lena reached into her utility vest, pulled out a microsat beacon the size of a coin, and pressed it into the socket on her encrypted key. Lights blinked once, twice. Green, upload sequence initiated. "They'll come for me, you know," Paige said softly, "as soon as that signal hits orbit." Lena never took her eyes off her. "Let them." The terminal screen began to scroll. 1% 6. 11%. Paige stepped back, fingers raised in mock surrender. "I'm not stopping you. I brought you here. Doesn't that count for something?" Lena's jaw clenched. "You sold them the map." "I followed orders, the ones that said peace required sacrifice. You think you're a one-woman revolution, Lena, but I'm the one who gave you the match." The come on Lena's belt CHIRPD. Not the open channel. The encrypted 1::: Ivy to crossbow, tracking the satellite ping. "Someone else is in the network. You've got less than 7 minutes. Lena responded without words. Shut the beacon down." "Where's the failsafe?" Paige paused. "Failsafe? The one you built in case this day came. The back door. Don't lie. I know you." A beat of silence. Then Paige turned and walked to the far cabinet, pulled a binder, flipped it open to reveal Grid of keys, actual metal keys, tagged and numbered. She handed Lena one. Far end of the underground hangar. Storage module 6. You'll find what you're looking for there. Lena studied her for a moment, then turned and left. She never saw the tear streak down Paige's cheek. The corridor leading to the underground hangar was filled with half-forgotten echoes of conflict, scraped walls, old burn marks, emergency tape fluttering in air vents. Lena. Past old war posters curling at the corners, some dated decades back. She passed through 2 checkpoints, both unmanned. Her boots echoed in the emptiness. Storage Module 6 was a reinforced chamber sealed with an ancient lock. The key slid in without resistance. The door hissed open. Inside, a drone. Not sleek, not corporate polished. A beast built for war and shadows. It was massive, 9 feet nose to tail. 4 turbine blades folded back like a sleeping falcon. Camo mesh half covered its surface. It bore no insignia. Next to it, crates, explosives, signal jammers. A duplicate of her field gear. In a folder, marked Crossbow Piero Takoshi. Flipped it open. Inside was a mission, not a rescue. Not a recon. An elimination of everyone on the list. Her eyes widened. Crossbow wasn't a designation, it was a contingency. If the network ever failed, Crossbow the pilot was authorized to erase all evidence. Everyone who knew. Everyone involved, including Paige. Lena turned slowly toward the drone. Her reflection stared back from its matte black surface. She wasn't ready to be the executioner, but maybe no one ever was. She assembled the drone silently, every motion an echo of muscle memory inherited from her father. Wiring, fuel cell, stabilizer fins. The rotors hummed softly to life. Then she lifted the crate of files, placed them inside the drone's pod. And programmed a flight path to command headquarters. Not a strike. Delivery, the truth sent directly to the top. Then she triggered the dead man switch to detonate the drone if intercepted. Next, she turned to the jammer kit. Time to make sure no one silenced this story. On the ridge, wind howled against the cliffside. Lena emerged from a maintenance shaft, face smeared in soot and rain. Her hands wrapped tight around the controller. The drone lifted, whirring like a predator held back by thread. She watched it disappear into the clouds. Then she keyed into Ivy. Package. Away. If they intercept, it goes dark. If they let it through, they'll burn for it. Ivy said. Lena exhaled. The war wasn't over, but her warning had been heard. Finally, drop a "If you believe some truths are worth the risk" comment. No. Turning back now. Let me know when to continue with part 6. Rain hammered the comms tower as though trying to erase it from the hillside. Beneath the platform, Lena crouched in the dark, soaked and silent, her gaze fixed on the signal tracker in her palm. The drone had made it past the first 2 checkpoints, but the final one was the real test. Cold open hook is less than or equal to 40 words. As the encrypted feed blinked red, then green, Lena whispered to herself. They saw it. They know now. But knowing wasn't safety. It was just the beginning. The signal link pulsed once data. Transfer complete. She let out a breath that felt years old. Headquarters had the package. That meant she'd passed the point of no return. She stood and turned into the storm. Her soaked jacket clung to her frame, boots sinking slightly into the muddy ridge. In the valley below, lights flickered across the compound like the twitching eyes of something that hadn't decided whether to wake or die. She descended quickly, ducking behind old transport crates, every muscle alert. The jamming equipment was still active. She could feel the tension in the air, like something held in place only by habit. Her cum crackled. They're stalling, Ivy said. Headquarters acknowledged the drop, but no action yet. They're evaluating, Lena swore. They're buying time, or hoping to clean house before it gets out. You know what comes next. Lena's silence was its own answer. Back inside the facility, Sector C had gone dark. No personnel. No heat signatures. That meant one thing. Clearance level reset. They were scrubbing Dot. She moved fast past the motor pool, now stripped to frame. Through the debriefing hall, abandoned with coffee still steaming in mugs. Down into the communications core where it all began. Dot, where they shifted the comms. Array 3 feet too low. She knew what she was looking for. She found it behind the server stack. A tiny fiber optic relay, glowing faintly blue. Not standard. She yanked it out. The screen next to her blinked. Remote command disruption. Detected. So they were still watching. She grabbed a signal recorder from the tech bench and plugged it in. If they wanted a trail, she'd give them one. The recorder flared green. She hit play. Voices spilled into the room. Pull her file. Wipe the diagnostics. No trail. What if she's not alone? She won't live long enough for that to matter. She shut it off. Her file was already gone. She was now an official ghost. Lena returned to the drone bay. The one they didn't use anymore. The one she'd modified months ago when everyone else was at the war games. Inside were 3 stripped down drones tagged as scrap, but one still worked. She'd named it Whisper. Compact. Silent. Fast. She uploaded the voice recording. Paired it with the footage from the breach. And the blueprint trail. Then she flew Whisper straight up and east, toward the satellite cluster used by international monitors. She wasn't just taking it to her own people now. She was taking it global. As the drone vanished into the clouds, Lena leaned back against the wall. Her pulse finally slowed. And that's when she felt it. The muzzle of a pistol against her neck. You just couldn't leave it alone, a voice said behind her. Male, familiar. Colonel Thatcher. She didn't flinch. You got my message, didn't you? I got the truth. And now I have to erase it. She turned slowly to face him. His face was pale, wet, furious. You've killed everything I built, he hissed. You built it on silence, on betrayal, on survival. Lena didn't blink. Then survive this. She ducked. The gun fired, but not before she'd slammed her shoulder into his ribcage. They crashed through the storage racks, metal clanging. He struck hard, but she was faster. Years of hiding. Years of being overlooked. They'd trained her better than he knew. She landed 2 quick strikes, throat, then knee. He went down hard, breathless. She took the pistol. You always underestimated the ones in coveralls, she said. Thatcher spat blood. They'll kill you for this. Then I'll be worth killing. She left him there, tagged for evac with a red triangle. The same one she used to save a guard days earlier. Full circle. She disappeared into the night. Drop a if you're still standing with her. Comment Whisper carries truth. Let me know when to continue with part 7. The world tilted slightly as Lena emerged into the wind again, Thatcher's blood still on her jacket. Her breath formed ragged clouds in the rain-chilled air. The compound lights blurred behind her, distorted by distance and heat and what felt like the end of something long overdue. Cold open hook is less than or equal to 40 words. Whisper was gone. The kernel was down. The files were airborne. Lena's name was no longer in any system, and yet, the world finally knew she existed. From the overlook ridge above the compound, Lena crouched beside a broken satellite dish, watching the dawn claw its way into the sky. The last 36 hours blurred in her memory, a rolling tide of gunfire, betrayal, revelation. Her fingers ached. Her ribs throbbed where Thatcher had slammed her into the rack. But she was still breathing, and more importantly, so was the story. Her cum crackled alive. Crossbow, you there? It was Ivy. Still here, Lena replied. You made the front page in 4 time zones. They're calling it the Ghost Protocol leak. Military brass in Geneva. 2 resignations already. And a live investigation by Dawn. Lena didn't answer. Right away. She was watching a convoy roll in unmarked black SUVs. "Recovery team?" she asked. Colon, no. "That's not our people. They're chasing containment. They won't find it. I scattered it across 5 redundant nodes. I know. I helped. Colon below." At the east gate, medics and internal security fanned out. Too late to stop anything. Too early to grasp the damage, Lena's thoughts. Returned to Paige. She hadn't heard from her since the archive. She keyed into the shadow line. "Halberd, are you secure?" "Static, then. I'm not the one they're hunting now." "You are. Where?" "Are you?" "Gone. Off-grid. No trail. Just like you taught me. Colon. Lena paused. "You still think I taught you anything?" Paige's voice cracked. "You taught me that silence is worse than death. Colon, then nothing. By midday, she was already 20 kilometers from the compound, hiking through the dry ravine that split the western forest. Ivy had arranged a drop-point old supply stash beneath. An outpost no longer on maps. Inside, clean clothes, a new ID, burner tech. And a note. "You're not done. They'll spin it, dilute it, paint you as rogue. If you want to finish this, come find me." 2 nights later, Lena stood outside a steel door embedded in the cliffs of the Nordic coastline. A biometric lock clicked open. Ivy stood on the other side. Younger than expected. Fiercer, she held out her hand. "Welcome to what's left of the truth." Behind her, screens, maps, dossiers pinned to cork like war relics. Lena stepped inside. "We're not the only ones, are we?" "Not by a long shot." Ivy tapped a keyboard. A dozen profiles lit up. Analysts, engineers, medics. All of them expunged from the record. All of them underestimated. "They called us unstable, overqualified, disposable," Ivy said. "But we're the only reason this house of cards is still standing." Lena looked at the map. 3 cities circled in red. "What's next?" Ivy smiled faintly. "You take the next target." Lena nodded. "And if they see us coming this time, then we stop warning them. Drop us if you're part of the team now." Comment. "No." More silence. "Let me know when to continue with part 8. The sea slammed the cliffs below like it was trying to shake the world clean. Lena stood in a room lined with soundproof steel, watching as Ivy pulled back a tarp to reveal something neither classified nor forgotten, but something built to stay. Unseen. Cold open hook is less than or equal to 40 words. Lena didn't flinch when Ivy showed her the terminal. The screen showed live feeds from 7 continents, and one sentence that would follow her forever. "Welcome back, Crossbow. The grid never sleeps." The safe house sat inside an old Cold War listening station buried in the rock. Ivy had rebuilt it with salvage and encrypted meshnet nodes, no satellite, no leaks, no command chains. It was invisible to the outside world. And now, Lena had a desk inside it. She didn't ask questions. Not yet. She just listened. On screen, the chatter unfolded like a war being fought with redacted names and invisible blood. Someone had taken Lena's files, correlated them with Whisper's payload, and decrypted the routing trail. Not to expose it, but to mimic it. "They're launching decoys," Ivy said, "to discredit the source." "Exactly. And they're good. We had a window. Now we're losing it." Lena stared at a blinking node labeled ALDER9. The data stream there was different, quieter, cleaner. Someone was slipping through untouched. Who's running Alder 9? Used to be Naval Tactical Office, until the funding went black. It's where the first signals originated, the ones that led you to the breach. Then it's not a decoy, Lena said. It's the core. They flew out that night in a 2-seat turboprop, hidden inside a decommissioned weather station. The flight was long and silent. Lena recalibrated sensors in the co-pilot seat. Ivy watched her. You ever miss it? The silence? No, the invisibility? Sometimes. You're not invisible anymore. Then we make that work for us. ALDER-9 was housed inside a civilian research dome, disguised as an Arctic meteorology station. Snow beat against the windshield as the plane circled the outpost. No heat signatures, Ivy murmured. That's not good. Or it means they left in a hurry. They landed rough, skis bouncing. Lena led with weapon drawn. Inside, the facility was dark, the hum of systems just barely audible. Cables had been yanked. Terminals smashed. Except one. Room 6B, a single server still powered. Still transmitting. She plugged in her toolkit. Data flooded the screen, and with it, video. Colonel Thatcher, sitting at a round table, not recent footage, and he wasn't alone. 4 others. All high-ranking. Talking casually about redirection algorithms, misfire corridors, and public management after exposure. This wasn't a black project. It was a consortium. Thatcher wasn't the top, he was the middle, and they had a plan. If the network burns, so does the witness. Lena's skin went cold. Her name wasn't on that list. It was on another. They planned this in stages, she said. Stage 1 was information control. Stage 2 was field interference. Stage 3 is containment by elimination. You're Stage 3, Ivy said. Lena backed up. We're all Stage 3. They rigged the server to replicate send everything to cloud lockers Ivy had buried inside dormant academic servers. Before Lena left, she reached into the vent and pulled the microdrive someone had hidden there. Handwritten on the casing. Asterisk. Not everyone forgot you. Inside was an audio file, Paige's voice. If you're hearing this, they got me. Use what I left. I did one thing right. Trace the route. Look for designation Kessel. That's where the rot starts. The flight back was quiet. Lena stared at the sky. Her silence wasn't empty anymore. It was sharpening. Drop a if you're still with her. Comment Stage 3 doesn't end her. Let me know when to continue with Part 9. The sky above Reykjavik was black glass. No stars, just a hollow quiet broken only by the low hiss of encrypted comms. In the shadows of a hangar rented under an old geological survey permit, Lena stared at the word etched into the microdrive. Casing. Kessel. It meant nothing until it meant everything. Cold open. Hook is less than or equal to 40 words. A cold wind cut through the hangar. Lena stared at the decrypted files page left behind and whispered, this wasn't a breach. It was a calibration. The faith. Microdrive unpacked slower than expected. Even Ivy looked rattled. Triple encrypted, military cipher, modified checksum headers. Whoever created this didn't want even our tools to touch it. Lena's eyes narrowed. But it's working. Line by line, the contents appeared. Not files. Not blueprints. Schedules. Names. Test. Environments. And beside each, Kessel. Always capitalized. Always sealed behind 9-digit keys. One entry flickered. Ivy tapped it. Here. This one's tagged with a location. Coordinates loaded. A place that didn't exist on maps anymore. South Coast. Former NATO intercept base. Decommissioned. No road access. Lena smiled grimly. That's never stopped. U.S. The flight took 4 hours. The trek another 7. They moved in silence through ash fields and glacial valleys, eyes constantly scanning horizon and sky. At the ridge, Ivy held up the monocular. 3 heat signatures. 2 guards, 1 stationary. Could be equipment or a body. Lena took the lead. Down the slope, across the black sand, into the remnants of a structure now half swallowed by frost and wind. They entered low and fast. No alarms. Just cold silence. And the smell of rust and damp circuits. The mainframe room was surprisingly intact, and humming. Ivy gasped. It's live. Lena was already moving. The terminal didn't require a password. It recognized her. The screen blinked. Welcome. Operator Crossbow. Kessel awaits. Ivy stepped back. That's not just your designation. It's embedded in the system. Lena stared at the flickering prompt. Paige didn't just leave me a lead. She left me a seat. They clicked open the first directory.audio files. Thousands, surveillance clips, intercepted comms, classified calls between senior command staff. All recorded, all archived, all filtered by keywords. And one keyword appeared over and over: simulated failure. The Kessel Project wasn't a defense mechanism. It was a laboratory, a field-wide behavioral simulator used to monitor how personnel responded to crisis, sabotage, and betrayal. The breach, the rerouted comms tower, even Thatcher's confrontation. Part of the test, scripted, tracked. Lena's reports weren't ignored. They were data points. Her defiance wasn't punished. It was measured. She wasn't meant to win. She was meant to react. And now that she had passed every threshold, they were preparing stage 4. What stage 4? Ivy whispered. Lena pointed to the final line on the screen. If crossbow exceeds parameters, terminate field operation. Deploy real asset. Ivy read it twice. You weren't the only one being tested. Lena stood slowly. And I'm not the only one left. They copied everything, left no trace, burned the facility to the ice. By morning, Kessel was no longer a place. It was a story, and Lena was about to tell it. Drop a if you've ever been part of someone else's test. Comment. She's not their experiment. Let me know when to continue with part 10. The sky above Brussels burned gold, but Lena's thoughts stayed buried under Icelandic ash. She moved through the crowd at Gare du Nord with purpose, hood up, eyes tracking every face, every camera, every mirrored surface. She wasn't just a survivor now. She was a variable they couldn't predict. Cold open hook is less than or equal to 40 words. Inside the cafe beside the train station, Lena unfolded the stolen dossier and murmured, "If I was part of their simulation, it's time I become their disruption." The Kessel files had shown more than just betrayal. They'd shown structure, hierarchy, recurrence. Each breach incident across 5 countries had followed the same pattern: predictive sabotage, command inaction, and a lone responder marked non-integrated. People like her. Outliers. One of them had disappeared 2 years ago in Moldova. Another had been quietly reassigned to a disaster relief post in Algeria, where her name was misspelled in every report. This wasn't coincidence. This was erasure. And now Lena had the pattern. She traced it across regions and overlays, narrowing down the signal origin. It wasn't random. It was fed through a single, ghosted node Cody named Dante. She leaned forward. Ivy watched her from across the table. "What's Dante?" "I think it's the operator, the one watching all of us." They landed in Geneva, posing as journalists attending a military ethics conference. Lena wore borrowed credentials and carried a thumbprint lock case with the Kessel data sliced into microfilm. Ivy handled logistics, flight manifests, backup IDs, safe exit routes. Lena's mission was simpler: find Dante, expose him. End this. Inside the Palais des Nations, Lena followed a senior analyst from the logistics desk to an auxiliary wing lined with dark glass and badge-only doors. She waited until the woman entered, then slipped the mirrored token through the lock spliced from Ivy's archives. The lock CHIRPED. She was in room 27. Looked like any other workspace until she saw the monitor. Not one feed. 6. Each displaying live satellite overlays. One of them was tracking Ivy. Another showed footage from Whisper. Third showed stills of Lena from 5 years ago. Pre-mission. Pre-facility. They'd been watching her long before she ever filed that first warning. And in the bottom right corner of the screen, cursor blinked over the words: User Dante, status observing. Lena moved fast. She cloned the session, routed it to Ivy's terminal. Then triggered a protocol they hadn't used in years: signal cascade injection. It would freeze the feed, but only for 48 seconds. Long enough, she followed the hallway deeper into the server wing, past security. Doors down 2 floors, and then she saw him, alone, typing. A headset over one ear. He didn't flinch. When she entered, he only looked up and said, "Crossbow." "Dante," she replied. He gestured to the screen. "You're early." She aimed her pistol at his chest. "You've been watching us, for how long?" "Since before you were even recruited. You're not anomalies, you're convergences." "Test cases." "No," Lena said. "We're the correction." He tapped a button, screens filled with red. "If you kill me, you kill the only one who can shut it down." "You already taught me how." She whispered. She shot the console, then the backup drive, then the signal uplink. She left. Dante alive. Barely. But Kessel wouldn't be observing anyone tonight. Ivy met her at the extraction point 20 minutes later. No words. Just a nod. They boarded the evac vehicle and disappeared into the snow. And that night, for the first time in years, Lena slept. Not as a ghost, but as a storm on the edge of waking. Drop us if you believe one name can collapse a network. Comment Endgame approaches. Let me know when to continue with part 11. The train tunnel beneath Lake Geneva was supposed to be forgotten. A Cold War relic. But Lena knew better. Anything buried was never meant to be forgotten, only delayed. And delay was a luxury they'd run out of. Cold open hook is less than or equal to 40 words. As the train doors sealed behind them, Ivy whispered, "This isn't extraction anymore." Lena nodded. "It's exposure." The data they'd pulled from Dante's systems confirmed their worst suspicions. Dante hadn't just observed. He'd curated. Kessel had evolved into something worse. A global behavioral influence framework. Not just simulations, but psychological pressure campaigns disguised as operational errors. Personnel rooted into failure. Relationships manipulated through staged trust breakdowns. Even supply shortages orchestrated to provoke reaction. Lena's breach? Engineered. Thatcher's betrayal? Triggered. Every outlier had been a spark watched, recorded. And if they didn't conform? Extinguished. They rode the freight shuttle in silence, heading toward Zurich, where a second archive long hidden beneath an urban renewal project waited. Ivy had found mention of it in KESSEL's Echo logs. It was labeled simply, Bastion. The Bastion archive had once been a bank vault. Now it was fiber optic nerve, insulated and submerged in concrete. They reached it by bypassing a subterranean waste management shaft, lowering themselves 5 stories in wet silence. At the final door, Lena entered. The key page had etched into the last microfilm shard. The vault opened. Inside, rows of servers, humming in defiance of dust and time, but no terminals. No chairs. It wasn't designed for use. It was designed for preservation. Ivy stared at the racks. Why build this and bury it? Lena walked to the center. Because what was stored here didn't just undermine Kessel. It invalidated the existence of half the global coordination doctrine. They found backups of every erased outlier report. Not just Lena's, 57 individuals. One of them was Ivy. Another page. Still others were scientists, relief workers, cryptographers. All of them flagged. All of them compartmentalized. None of them aware they were part of something shared. Until now. Lena downloaded every record. And then Ivy did something Lena didn't expect. She uploaded them live. Within 6 minutes. Mirror forums in Singapore, Sao Paulo, and Johannesburg posted the full archive under the tag #undisclosed alignment at minute 10. Whistleblowers from Italy and India confirmed segments. At minute 15. Military command structures in 5 countries entered lockdown. And at minute 22, Ivy looked at Lena and said, "We just broke the program." Lena only nodded. "Then we build something else." They resurfaced 2 hours later, cold, sore, alive, News outlets were scrambling to verify. One showed Lena's photo. But not from Whisper. From 5 years ago. Smiling in a uniform they'd since deleted from record. She wasn't erased anymore. She was evidence. Ivy handed her a secure line. 3 more names reached out. One was in Paraguay. Said he found something beneath a weapons testing lab. Lena took the call. The voice was trembling. They built a failsafe, Lena. If Bastion ever leaked, they had a purge clause. Location triggered. She froze. Where? Silence. Then, Brussels, Zurich, and Reykjavik. Lena closed her eyes. Kessel wasn't just observation data, it was looped containment. Breach, response, exposure, then purge. The same cities, the same sequence. They're going to wipe everything again, Ivy gritted her teeth. Unless we stop the reset. They needed to move. Fast. Drop a if you've ever felt the pattern break. Comment, no more resets. Let me know when to continue with part 12. The hotel lobby in Reykjavik shimmered with quiet opulence, glass walls, white stone, tranquil silence. Lena Park sat near the far end, wearing clothes 2 sizes too large and a burn scar traced across her left jaw. She wasn't hiding. Not anymore. She was waiting. Cold open hook is less than or equal to 40 words. Across the lobby, a man set down his briefcase. The tag read Unit 74, Contingency. Lena didn't look up as she said into her earpiece. They just activated Reykjavik. The failsafe. Purge protocols were fast, brutal, elegant in the way only systems designed by cowards could be. Kessel, exposed but not dead, had initiated Phase 5, operational containment through attrition. The targets weren't soldiers, they were records, data caches. Redundant servers hidden in municipal buildings and embassies. And people, the ones who knew, which meant Lena and Ivy, and anyone who'd shared the leaks. Outside the hotel, 2 technicians disguised as telecom workers rerouted cabling beneath a city node. Ivy was one of them, inside the junction box, a kill switch wired to trigger. Data loss scripts across the Icelandic archives. Ivy jammed it with a fragment of broken glass from a mirror. Lena had smashed that morning. Symbolism wasn't lost on either of them. We've got 5 minutes max, Ivy hissed into her cum. I need 4, Lena answered. She was already in motion. The man with the Unit 74 tag entered the elevator. Lena followed. No words, just 2 people riding in silence. Then she hit the emergency stop. Between floors. He reached for his jacket. She jammed her elbow into his throat. The suitcase dropped. He slammed her into the mirrored wall twice, but Lena rotated under his arm and drove her knee into his spine. He buckled. She disarmed him, cracked the suitcase lock, and yanked out the tactical cum device. Too late. The light was already blinking. Remote signal sent. Failsafe unlocked. Damn it. She grabbed the suitcase and the man's jacket badge, tied him up with an elevator restraint, and kicked open the maintenance hatch. Ivy, she gasped. They triggered the next node. Zurich's next. Understood. We'll meet you at Fallback. Fallback was an old chapel north of town rebuilt as a geothermal monitoring station. Only Ivy knew it also housed a microwave cum. Unit pointed toward Norway. They arrived within the hour. The suitcase revealed more than just purge triggers. Inside, lists. Names, photos of terminals flagged for tactical erasure. And a digital map with red pulsing lights. One of them was Lena. They don't need to find us, Ivy said. They've already written our endings, then we edit the script. Lena pulled out the core device from the suitcase, an autonomous field protocol key. It was designed to synchronize with every Kessel node within 300 kilometers. She flipped the protocol. Instead of activating deletion, it would activate duplication. That every node it touched would replicate its entire memory log to satellite mirror servers. In real time. And all of it visible to the public. You ready to make the virus into the cure? She asked. Ivy grinned. I was born in a firewall. They uploaded from the chapel's antenna as a blizzard rolled in. At first nothing. Then, signals lit up like wildfire. Reykjavik, Zurich, Brussels. Instead of vanishing, the nodes were bleeding truth into every channel imaginable. Kessel's failsafe was inverted. It was over. By morning, Lena's name wasn't just trending. It was protected. Governments issued statements. Retired analysts confirmed legitimacy. And more whistleblowers began to speak. The pattern was broken. The reset had failed. And Lena? She was still here, standing on a ridge above the chapel, wind cutting across her face, Ivy at her side. "What now?" Ivy asked. Lena's voice was quiet. "Now, we wait for the world to admit we were never wrong. Drapa, if you believe exposure is only the beginning. Comment, I would have flipped the failsafe too. Let me know when to continue with the final part 13. The snow didn't melt, it just shifted. Wind piled it against fences and walls, reshaped it over rooftops. Much like the story Lena Park had dragged into the light, no longer hidden, only rearranged. The world had seen too much to pretend anymore. Cold open. Hook is less than or equal to 40 words. From a rooftop in Oslo, Lena watched the embassy lights flicker as her name echoed from 1,000 screens. She wasn't a code word anymore. She was the correction they never calculated for. The final wave of Kessel activity broke like a tide in reverse. Dozens of mirrored nodes, no longer. Quarantine flooded independent media channels. Test files. AI simulations. Encrypted briefings. With hard-coded metadata. None of it deniable. What began with one ignored warning had grown into a reckoning. It wasn't a broadcast anymore. It was a confession, and for once, no one was in control of the narrative. In Geneva, 3 senior figures stepped down. In D.C., an oversight committee voted unanimously to unseal 27 security annexes, and in Brussels, a representative placed a single sentence on record. This program should never have existed. But for Lena, that wasn't enough. Because Page was still gone. Because Whisper was still scattered over a frozen valley. Because for every name exposed, 10 more had been erased before the leak ever began. So she kept moving. From safe house to safe house, she and Ivy watched the dominoes fall. Outliers came out of hiding. A medic in Zambia. A pilot in Romania. RETIRED, cartographer from Halifax, who'd noticed false coordinates embedded in sea charts 10 years earlier, and no one had believed her. Until now. In Stockholm, Lena gave her first closed-door testimony. No cameras. No recordings. Just her voice. And then, on the 5th day, she stood before a crowd of reporters and said only this: "My name is Lena Park. They erased me. But I remembered everything." The crowd was silent. Then one person clapped. Then another. And another. Until the street shook with the sound. But change doesn't ride in all at once. It creeps. Weeks later, Ivy passed Lena a data stick. One last signal. This wasn't generated from any exposed Kessel node, Ivy said. It's external. Lena plugged it in, one file. A single line of text. Dante was never the top. Then coordinates. They stood again in Iceland, on the bluff where Whisper had vanished into clouds. Below, wind howled through canyons too jagged for maps. The coordinates matched a crevice narrow, silent, swallowing. Inside, a satellite relay. Leave. It wasn't built by a nation. It was corporate. Private. Autonomous. A final node recording everything, not for command. Not for defense, for commerce, advertising, behavioral prediction, market manipulation. Kessel had been just the prototype, the real experiment was still running. Lena stared into the blinking red light. They never wanted to control people. What then? Ivy asked. They wanted to sell them. Lena disabled the relay, then she rewired it, and from that node, she sent one final file. A compressed, signed, unalterable package. Every file, every directive, every Name. Made visible. Made permanent. No one could pretend again. Not now. They walked back through the snow without speaking. There was no parade. No metal. Just the knowledge that the truth was finally louder than the system that tried to bury it. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. 3 months later, in a small town whose name wasn't worth mapping, Lena taught a workshop on signal integrity to a class of students who didn't know her past. One girl asked why she always made them check the backup twice. Lena smiled faintly. Because once someone ignored me, and a whole system collapsed. She wasn't hunted anymore, but she wasn't idle either. And as long as someone kept building silence, she'd be there to break it. Because Lena Park was never supposed to be the heroine. She was supposed to be the overlooked variable, the janitor. The echo. But they'd underestimated her, and she'd turned the warning they dismissed into a weapon they couldn't contain. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.